Now, I've been talking loads with you before about podcasting and how you can use that to build your personal brand. Case is going to take us to the next level and actually show us how we can start using directories so we can be found and get onto the right shows. Case, good morning. How are you?
Hello. Great. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Can you believe that Case is actually, it's 4 a.m. for her, and I was apologizing to her that I'd got her up so early, and she told me she'd been up for half an hour anyway. She normally is, because she should be in the gym just now. So
Yeah, I would say it's my morning routine ever since I go to the gym in the morning, but after January 1st, all sorts of people were going to the gym early in the morning. So I had to move my time up because in COVID times, prefer to have to have space to myself. So that's why I would normally be up at this time anyway.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you talking to us and being ready at this time in the morning. Now, Case, can we just rewind back to when you were in high school and what it was that you were thinking you were going to do? Because podcasts weren't really a thing then. We don't really talk about entrepreneurship in high schools. I know that there are more nowadays, but back in our days, they weren't talking about entrepreneurship. It was definitely get a job and try and stay there till you can retire, etc. What was 15-year-old you thinking they were going to do when they grew up?
Well, it's funny. I was always thinking I would run a media company. I was always interested in the news channels, the entertainment, the movies, all of that kind of stuff. And I was looking at media companies. I was looking like, what's Ted Turner doing? Like, how is he building this company and things like that? It was just an interest of mine. When I graduated from high school, I knew nobody would buy me a car, which is what I really wanted. So I asked for a copy of The Powers That Be, which is the late David Halberstram's book about the great media companies, CBS and the Los Angeles Times, New York Times. It's a book about that big, thick book about the whole backstory. And of course, it seemed like this was going to be a very complicated process to actually do this. But I should probably start just maybe working for one. So I ended up going to work as a reporter. And so I did do the traditional path of college and career. But I was working as a reporter, but I was always interested in international affairs, international news, and so on. So I wrote the Foreign Service exam and ended up traveling the world with the Canadian Foreign Service. I grew up in Canada. And after ending up doing trade policy and talking to business people all the time, rekindled the thought that, I always wanted my own company. And so I decided that, of course, a safe path would be to go do an MBA, which is what I did. And then I went into corporate America. I went back into the entertainment industry. I worked for one of the big Hollywood studios behind the scenes. And when I was talking to lawyers as we were doing the transition to digital media, that I suddenly realized that what was happening online was where I needed to be. that was the next step. If I want my media company, I could do it through online processes, because now the barriers to entry have all fallen. Everybody has an opportunity. You could have your own radio show, which is a podcast. You could have your own channel on YouTube. You can certainly print or publish, in a digital format. So I have managed to build that media company. It's not quite what Ted Turner said, not yet, but it's I'm on my way. Taking it. What I tell people all the time as entrepreneurs: take advantage of this incredible opportunity that exists with the internet that's out there for everyone to access, and the global marketplace. So you're not just trying to get your friends and family to follow you or talk to you anymore. You can go out to the entire world and see if anyone's interested in your topic. So that's sort of the fastest part of the story.
I love that. I was actually talking to someone on LinkedIn actually about 12 hours ago about the fact, and she had a media career, and basically she was told after the show on a radio, she was told, well, you're done. This is you, that was the last show you're going to do. And then, a few years later, same thing happened again. That she was basically told, oh, that's you finished. We're doing something new next weekend. And now she spends her time helping other people to, be natural on camera, to be natural on podcasts, all those kind of things. Because she's taken all of that training. Because previously you had to get a phone call and you were told, oh, you're getting a slot on the radio or a slot on TV, or, you had to be lucky if a journalist picked up your media release and then you got something in the paper. We have got so much access now to be able to create our own shows, just like what you're talking about. So I love that you've taken all that teachings and all the stuff that you had aspired to when you were in school, and now you're like doing it my way. I love it.
I'll tell you a quick story. Our neighbor down the street ran the local television station. He ended up building it into a big national network. But I remember when I was, a kid, and I was asking, what are the types of things? And he actually said to me, well, I don't think there's anything that you can do at this station. And I was thinking, I can't do anything. I can't sweep the floor, like nothing at all. And so fast forward years later, I am an executive in Hollywood. And this person, well, he's passed now, so I could say he was the lieutenant governor of the province I grew up in. And it was the Canada Day celebrations at the consulate. So I had an inn at the consulate. And so I went up to him, do you remember me? And, and it's one of those moments where you get to say, well, it turns out I could do something. And so I always tell people that is one of those, stick to your goals. Don't let people dissuade you. Don't let people talk you out of it. They might not realize what your potential is, but if you stick with what you want to do, you'll still end up exactly where you want to be.
That's a brilliant story. Love that. And I think you're so right, because it doesn't matter what your dreams are and what your goals might be, but in 4 or 5 years' time, you don't know what kind of world we're living in. Gosh, did anyone think COVID would happen? Did anyone think that the internet would be as powerful as it is? 10 years ago, nobody would have thought of really putting all their eggs in a basket online and creating their own shows and stuff. So I think if you keep going, nothing's worthless. Like everything you learn and you pick up, it can be adapted. If you're adaptable and can think outside the box, you'll make it work. So it's great.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Just have an idea and go and just keep trying it.
Tell me a little bit more about Ready Entrepreneur.
Sure. Yes. So for Ready Entrepreneur, so when I began my career online, I actually began as a writer. I started publishing books. I just loved how Amazon and Smashwords made it possible for writers to go directly to readers. So no more middleman. You could just go directly to the audience. Some people don't think that's a great idea. I think it's an awesome idea, because even traditional publishers, even if they wanted to, could not get to all the books, the good books that are actually being published, especially around what we're talking about, online business. Like those books have to come out quickly. Things are always changing, and traditional publishing would never have been able to keep up. So that's what started that path. And then I started learning about websites and landing pages and reader magnets and all these other things in terms of marketing and promotion. And that led me to what's happening with online business in general, because people started to ask me, well, what are you doing and how does this work? And what are people really doing online? And isn't everything a scam and all that type of thing? So I realized that a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs don't have the big picture at the beginning of the story. They'll listen to a webinar and this guru will say, you got to do this. It's my one proven method to be successful. And they'll be like, okay, I'll do that. And then if that doesn't work, and then that's the next thing and the next thing. And there's no kind of overview. So Ready Entrepreneurs at the very beginning of the process. I prepare aspiring entrepreneurs to understand this entire online business world, how you can use technology, free resources, low cost resources, and of course the global marketplace. I always like to throw in something global. I'm a big global traveler. And, for my foreign service days, I'm always traveling, and for not now, of course. But I always want people to understand that your market is the entire world. Your neighborhood is the entire world now. So what I do is work with people right at the beginning, especially second career professionals like me, corporate types. So you want to make that transition out of corporate to online. And I help you figure out what would be the right way to go, at least how to think about it. You might not know. You might not know if you want to do a podcast or YouTube or something like that. But I give you that, how to think about it, so that you can then not, sign up for every single course that's out there and just keep trying. It gives you a way to actually make decisions in this process.
And that's the most dangerous thing when you're starting your business. Shiny objects. You got to have everything.
Yeah, and that's what I did. So that's how I know how to help you to avoid that.
It's like this podcast, the amount of people that have asked me, how did you start your podcast? What did you need? I literally just plugged. I didn't even need a microphone really, because if you've got these earbuds that have got the microphone on them, you can get good enough quality from that if it's just about getting it done, not perfect. And really, does perfect even exist? You've got everything. If you've got a laptop and you've got a phone and you've got some headphones with a microphone, you've got everything that you need. Everything else comes later when you start upgrading things, and when you decide, once you've got past that 7 episodes, I think they say, is when you fall off the bandwagon and think it's too hard. Then you start upgrading, and then you start going for it if it's working for you.
Okay.
It's the same with anything, though. I think
Yes.
you've got to dip your toe in the water, and everything isn't for everyone.
Yeah, you have to get started. And I'm glad you said, just done is better than perfect. That is absolutely the mantra, and just keep going. Another one I like to use is, my crappy, podcast is better than the one you've never done, or something you could say, or,
100%.
my scary video is better than the one you've done, that kind of thing. Because if you could worry about that type of thing forever. That, there's going to be somebody who doesn't like it. They're going to think I'm silly. They're going to think it's poor quality and things like that. But nowadays, what are people doing online? They're searching for information. That's what they're doing on Google. That's what people are doing in Amazon. That's what people are doing on Facebook, even when they're when people are scrolling, they're looking for something, right?
Yep.
So if you're at least there, you have a chance. If you're not there at all, you got no chance to find it. Nobody's ever going to find you if you're not actually online. But if you're online and you're doing something, and maybe what you're saying resonates with people. So they're not looking at, is it a beautiful video or something? They're like, wait, that's a thing that I'm looking for. That's what I was wondering about. And that's what will catch people. And that's even more so now, because there's a lot of problems in the world today. So a lot of people are looking for solutions to them. And if you have a good idea and you actually can say something that people pick up as an idea that they're also thinking about, that's what they're going to hang on to. They're not, obviously, if you're doing audio, it has to be clear enough for them to hear it. But beyond, and a microphone on your smartphone is fine for that right now. I mean, the quality of our technology is so good. And then videos and things like that, if you spend all the time fussing about what it looks like, you'll miss out on getting to your audience, and you don't want to do that.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And I think that, we have smartphones with us all the time, or we're sitting in front of computers and laptops. If something comes along that we're vaguely interested in, or someone comes along, the first thing we do is we go and Google them, whether it's that, it's a product or a service we want from them, or if we're employing someone and a resume comes past our desk, we're all on Google straight away. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. There's no way that people aren't Googling. And if you don't find anything, and it doesn't matter whether it's a podcast or it's YouTube or LinkedIn or videos, Instagram, it just has to be something that almost proves you exist.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy, but it's almost like if there's no footprint of you online, does this person exist?
Yeah, exactly. And the more people talk about being consistent, this is something I didn't do in the beginning, so I've learned this. One of the reasons to be consistent with whatever you're doing, whether it's putting out your podcast every week or putting out a blog every week or something like that, it's to have that presence, because there are people looking in different directions online. The market is there. So you don't have to create traffic. The traffic is there. I like to use this analogy, from the movies, the old medieval marketplace. So there'd be a walled town in the middle of the countryside. And on Sundays, they would open the gates so that everybody could come in to sell in the market. That's what we've got. Everybody's in the market. So the next step is, how do you get attention? And that's why you would have people, juggling or something like that to get attention. So you have to think about that. Everybody's there. So if you're there all the time, if you're there every week, if they know that your product's always available, then that gives people a sense of trust. And they might think, maybe they've seen your face 4, 5, 6 times. And it's like, that person keeps showing up. What they're saying is kind of interesting. I'm going to start listening. I'm going to start watching. And before you know it, you're starting to build an audience.
Yeah, and familiarity is the best way to build trust. And like you said, if you keep showing up, it's the same if it's I know a lot of people aren't going to events in person at the moment, but if you keep going to that same networking event, then people will start to notice you. One of the things when I work with clients one-on-one is, obviously we're trying to build their personal brand and stuff like that. And we'll talk about networking. And they'll list out all the networks that they want to go to. And it's so widespread.
Yes.
And we have to reel that all the way back, because you've only got one touch point with people. And it's not about trying to hit the mass. It's about hitting the same people over and over again with the same message, whether it's online or offline. And I think people forget that they want to do a scattergun approach. And it's the exact same. Any good marketer that goes into a business will say, who are you trying to target? Who's your niche? Who's your market? Who's your ideal audience? It's the exact same for us as entrepreneurs trying to build up our tribes, trying to build up our customer base, our suppliers, or if you're someone who's looking for a job, it's the exact same thing. We have to continually be in the same place, in front of the same people over and over and over again. And also, I heard something recently that it just stuck with me, and I can't remember for the life of me who said it to me. But just to keep repeating it, because although you feel like you've heard it a million times, it's the first time that some other people have heard it, and then you've got another group of people over here who are still keen to hear that again, but with a different twist to it. So
yes, yeah, there's absolutely no problem with repeat. I was at a conference one. I think Sean West, he was on stage, and he said, and somebody had asked him that question, and he said, "How many people here have heard me before?" And about 80% of the audience put up their hand, and then he said, how many people have heard something different today? And it was everybody again. So you can hear the message, but you hear it differently. They say you have to reach people 7 times with the same message before it sinks in. So don't worry. It might sound repetitive to you. So think of it as an opportunity to really hone your message, to really get good at stating your message, I always say, to be prepared for your Oprah interview. Make sure you've actually said it enough times that you really feel confident and strong and authoritative around what your message is. And there's no problem with you could come up with different stories around it or something like that, but it is for other people the first time that they're hearing it.
Yeah, 100%. And now I'm going to go back to Hollywood because I'm intrigued. And you just mentioned Oprah. Who are some of the famous people that you were a bit gobsmacked in awe when you came across them when you were in Hollywood?
There's quite a few. I mean, that's so many, but because I worked on the studio lot, that's the only reason I've seen so many. But that's actually the safest place for celebrities. You're not allowed to, it's so unprofessional. You can't go up and do anything. So I really enjoyed seeing both. Well, I'm going to forget now. But I'm going to say Robert Downey. It was Robert Downey Jr. and the guy who was playing Spider-Man at the time, and I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyway, I saw them standing together and talking, and I was like, oh, those two are talking. And it's funny because you always want to, let's see if I get close to see what they're talking about. But you have to do it very professionally and make it look like it's all official and you're just, inspecting the door or something like that. So that was always fun. But celebrity sightings, if you're in LA in general, it's always fun to go out. I had my family members with me one time, and they were so excited because John Lithgow asked for the ketchup off our table or something like that, and they couldn't believe it. And they're like, and they're like, well, I guess they have to eat too, and all this stuff. And it's like, yes. so it's fun to see it's always fun to just to see people out in the world and realize that they're also all real people. And just another sort of fun story. When I was in business school, which was I also did in LA at UCLA, we had somebody who had an in that got us in as seat fillers. So I actually attended a number of events like award shows and so on, all dressed up as a seat filler. So that's why I've seen a lot of celebrities, because seat fillers are the people in the first few rows. They don't want it to look empty on camera. So if somebody gets up to go somewhere, the seat fillers rush in and just sit there until that person comes back, so that the first front rows always look full. So that was always fun, and always got to, and again, we were not, supposed to bother anyone or anything, but you kind of got to be in their presence and just sort of check out what everyone was, talking about and things like that.
That's so cool. Well, I was actually in a Hollywood movie myself one point.
Wow.
Did not meet anyone famous. It was the Harry Potter movie. They were that picture behind me, if anyone's watching the video, is actually a Harry Potter train going over the viaduct at Glenfinnan. Okay. And when I was in high school, because my high school is the only high school for miles near this viaduct, they were looking for extras. So our whole school, well, at least 2 years of our school, because there was 1,000 pupils.
Yeah.
2 of the years, we got dressed up, we got the cloaks on and everything, and we were in the train, and basically all the train did was go back and forth over this viaduct all day to make sure it got the best shot. And there was no Harry Potter or Ron or Hermione in the train while we were there. It was just all of our schoolmates, but we were dressed up. We felt pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
and
awesome.
Then we all filed to the cinema, and you couldn't make anyone out. But we're there. We know
So
we're there.
you're there. That's what's important.
So that's my only claim to fame. You definitely
That's
win.
awesome. Harry, no, you're actually in the movie. That's the whole point. You got to get in the movie. That's where you start.
Oh, look, it didn't go very far after that. So, okay, sorry, we've totally gone off track here a little bit. We were meant to be talking about podcasts and how can we get into directories? How can we start building our brand through podcasting by getting noticed and getting on the right shows? Talk to me about that.
Yes, absolutely. So what I did, podcasting, of course, has taken off, especially in the last year with everybody at home. So I was promoting my last book, Recast, and I was looking at how do I get on more podcasts? I have a podcast myself. I listen to podcasts, and maybe you're out there listening, thinking, well, I could talk about different subjects. I'm an interesting person. I've got something to say. How do I do this? So I started looking into it, and I realized there was no details. There was a lot of people that said, oh, just go to the directories and see what's there, or go to Apple Podcasts and so on. But I started getting into the details, and my friend Nan McKay, who's the host of Trailblazers Impact and a bunch of other shows, she said, I think other people want this information, like this process that you've developed. So I'll just go through and quickly just to have a sense of what it is. The idea is you want to get beyond the most popular directories, because Apple Podcasts, when you're doing a search using a particular keyword for your subject area, they're not going to show you the depth of the 2 million podcasts, almost 2 million podcasts that are out there now. So you need to look at the directories that have a much longer search results process, because the directories are not like Google. They're just lists of podcasts. And by the way, a directory is everything from the apps like Apple and Stitcher and so on to just websites like digitalpodcast.com that just list all the podcasts they can find. So I've looked at more than 80 directories now, and I'm sure there's more even since then. So what you do first is come up with your keywords and think very broadly about where your category is. You might think, by the example I always use is, well, I talk about tulips. Okay, that's great. There are actually 42 tulip podcasts. I've checked this out. But you want to then come the next level of keywords. What about podcasts about flowers or gardening or outdoor activity? So you have to think broadly, because you're going to go through this list and you're trying to look for as many shows as possible. To be fair, a lot of shows are inactive. So when they say there are 2 million podcasts, it's true, because podcasts don't go away. Podcasts live forever. You can go back to a show that's not doing any new episodes, but it's still available. So that makes it part of the 2 million.
Because a lot of us don't get past that episode 7. Yes.
No, a lot of people, and especially now with a lot of people experimenting with it, there's a lot of one episode podcasts, which always surprised me, because there's a nice graphic, a good description, but one episode. But if somebody is looking to be interviewed, of course, you want active shows. So the very first thing to check is the last episode upload date. I always tell people, check that before anything. Don't get into the description and start thinking, oh, this is a great show, only to look and see they haven't posted anything for 2 years. So check first, what's the last episode upload date? And there's no directory that gives you all information up front, but some of them, like Listen Notes, when you search, the initial search by keyword will show that information. Some will show it as a time frame. So it will say a day ago or 6 months ago or something like that. Others will actually put the date. So you check that first. Okay, that's good. Then you look at the show description. Look for the word interview, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't mean anything either way. One thing is that podcasters are all doing their own thing. So a description that says they do interviews, and you might look at the episodes and there's no interviews. So it's kind of the question you want to ask in your pitch. And then there might be a show that doesn't say anything in the description about interviews, but has a whole lot of interviews in the episodes. So you have to look at both. But if it does say interview, at least you know that's an in. And then look at the episodes, look at the episode descriptions. You want to see, what are people talking about? Listen to a few shows. I always listen while I'm doing this research to get a sense of what the show's about. If everything looks good, then you go for the contact information. And I'm assuming
I got through all that then, I guess, because you're here now.
Yeah, if you think that this looks like a show that resonates with what you're talking about, you go. And now the contact information, my process is to send an email. And I think that is the best way, in a sense that you could put a good, clear message in an email. If you try to go through social media and you're sending direct message and so on, it's kind of, I don't know if podcasters really want people pitching them through social media. So, and you might not be able to really say anything. maybe you could send a DM that says, how do I approach your show? You might be able to do that. But for the most part, I look for an email address. The other thing I look for, always go to the website, because a lot of shows now have a specific form to fill out, the guest request form. And what's great about that is, they do interviews, that they will take requests for interviews. And it gives, now some people don't like it because it forces you to take your pitch and then put it into their form. So it might take you longer to fill out or something like that. But I actually do appreciate when a podcaster really makes it clear what they're looking for. And you can also decide, if you don't like their questions, move on to the next show. There are so many shows to get through. Depending on your topic, there might be thousands of podcasts for you to get through. So you might have been excited because you found a really good show and everything. And then you go to fill out their form and they're asking weird questions, or you don't have to pay for shows. Some podcasters are starting to do that. They're starting to request a fee or sponsorship or things like that. So if you don't like that idea, just move on to the next one. If there's no specific form, just try to find their contact page on the website. I know some people think that's like, it's gone nowhere if you fill out that page, but I've had some good results from that. People do read their contact, those, again, if you've got a good pitch in that comment section, then that's what they're looking for. And if there's still that, you can look for any kind of email. If you could only find the support at email or the info at email, just try it if you really think that's a good show. And if all of that doesn't work, if there's no emails, but some podcasters have taken down all their contact information because they just get too many requests. And if you don't think social media is going to work for the same reason, then move on. Unless you want to build a relationship with the podcaster some other way by starting to follow them and commenting on their posts and all that kind of stuff, you can do it. You can do that, as well. But if you're just trying to find shows that look like they'll be a good place for you, the shows that do interviews, that they're active, that they're talking about your topic, then you want to just keep going through the process and don't worry about, people who don't respond. A lot of people will not respond. And if it doesn't look like, if there's anything about the show that just doesn't feel right, move on, because the podcaster, it can do what they want. So they don't want to waste their time with somebody who doesn't like what they're doing. If you don't like what they're doing, they don't care. Like, you move on too. And they don't want to be harsh about it, but everybody's doing their own thing. And that's the beauty of it. We've got, 2 million voices out there talking, and there's more to come. And people really want to talk about specific things, and they have a specific approach. They want to talk about things that they want to hear themselves. So if you think, oh, this podcast would be great for me, but I don't like the fact that they asked this question, then it doesn't make sense for you to keep trying to pursue them. So I say and now there's so many directories as well. One of the things I would say is to check the different directories, but to look for those specific things I talked about. When you do initial search, you want to see the show description. There's maybe one directory that actually shows the entire show description on initial search. So you want at least 1 to 3 lines that gives you a sense what the show's about. You want that date. And then what I do is I make a list of the shows that look like a good possibility. I do about 100 at a time. And then I go back and search one on each one. And I look for those other things.
At a time.
Yeah, I make it because of the inactive shows. There's one directory, Pod Knife, that actually flags the inactive shows, but that's their definition of inactive. And I know as a podcaster, some podcasters are just taking 6 months off, nobody's sending out press releases saying, hey, my podcast is going to be off for a bit. And there are very few final episodes. That's what I find interesting, is when the show, I think people just don't know they're going to end their show. So They decide to take a little break. And then I've reached out to podcasters. I give it 6 months, actually. If I see the show has not been live for 6 months, but everything else looks good, I'll reach out to the podcaster and say, are you still doing your show? And I've actually had people come back and say, yeah, I'm going to be revamping it. Let's talk, or something like that. So you really don't know what the podcaster's doing. So it's not necessarily, so that flag on Podknife is one way to know. Maybe if you've looked at everything, you think, okay, the show's really listed as inactive. But if it's within the last 6 months, everything else looks good, I would still reach out to the podcaster, especially if they're active on social media. There might be something else going on. They might be just trying to do a different show or planning on reviving it or something like that.
Wow, there's some awesome tips there for us. But 100 at a time. Wow. How many podcasts have you been on personally?
I've been on over 50 shows now. And so I have researched about a little more than 1,300 shows that I've researched. And I reached out to more than 400 and got about, over 2 different subjects. I talk about entrepreneurship and I talk about guest podcasting. And I've been on, I think 55 to date. And and I do it all the time. So I'm constantly reaching out and, it is a longer process, DIY, do-it-yourself process. You can always hire a firm or something like that, but here's the difference. Besides the money, you don't know what you're getting when you hire an agency to do it for you, and you miss the opportunity to build connections to the podcaster, who is that person in your industry who is actually out there with a show. So when you reach out yourself, you might actually take that connection to the podcaster to some other project. I have gone back. I've had podcasters come back and tell me, "Oh, I'm going to start another show about something. Will you come back for the other show?" People have referred me to other podcasters. We've done other separate projects. So you end up building these collaborations. This is your networking in in 2021 when we're still locked down. You're able to go ahead and make these connections, make these relationships. And if you hired a firm to do everything for you, you would not have that opportunity.
Yeah, I like that because obviously personal branding is my jam. I love that. And that's all about relationships and it's all about you being familiar, you being trusted. And when you add too many layers between you and someone else, then it does get difficult. And don't get me wrong, I know that most people have got to have assistants, VAs, someone helping you. And perhaps an agency is a good idea for the first skim to be able to give that list of 100 before you start whittling it down and getting down to it yourself, perhaps would be a better way. But yeah, I think that the actual outreach needs to be you personally, because I know for my podcast, and my podcast is still relatively small, it's not massive yet. If you're listening in a couple of years' time, perhaps I have taken off and it is amazing. I don't know. But when I get outreach quite a lot asking to be on the show, and if it's someone asking on behalf of their boss or behalf of a client or something, sometimes I'm a little bit kind of like, oh, why is the person who's going to come and speak to me too good to actually say hi to me in the first place, if that makes sense? And it does a little bit kind of like, but you're just going to turn up and I'm going to have a chat with you and I'm going to promote you, but you're not really interested in the small chat before, which, it's, maybe I'm a little bit sensitive, but that's what personal branding is to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also your podcast, what's fabulous is your podcast is specific. It's around a specific topic. So I know people, there's the top 100 podcasts and they've got tens of millions of downloads and all that kind of thing. But if I said to you, you have an audience of 1,000 people waiting to hear from you, or 2,000 people, 10,000, whatever it is, those are people who want to hear what you have to say. It's a very specific topic. That's exactly what they're looking for. So yes, it's great to be on the top 100. Yes, bow, wow. But what you really want to be doing is building your connections to the deeper list of podcasts where you have audiences who actually are listening for your subject. That's where you want to be.
Oh, look, not a massive fan of Gary Vee, as in I think that trying to do 3 bits of content on 10 different platforms every day is a little bit hard for everybody, unless you've got a massive team like he does. But he makes a really good point when he says, just talk to the one. Doesn't matter if it's only just one person speaking to you, that's listening to you. Like, that's all you need to start with, is you need to make an impact for one person before you start worrying about getting 100 likes here and 1,000 downloads. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important as well to stick with your message and your, they say customer avatar, but however you want to think about your audience. And to, again, if you're going through podcasts, don't worry about the ones that not quite what you wanted, because you can find some that are exactly what you're looking for. So you want to just keep going through, stick with your specific message, because that is what people are looking for. That's what's missing for them. So you want to be out there and fill that gap and not try and adapt and adjust and so on to what you think that particular podcaster wants. You want to make sure that you stick with the message that you know the audience that you're targeting actually wants to hear.
100%, and offer value and offer information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in just giving it all out, giving it all for free, because you can learn everything and anything online at the moment, or
Yes.
I think you've been able to for a long time. So they're going to look for it somewhere. Why not be the person to actually help someone and just impart all of your knowledge, all your skills, everything to them? Because half the people were never going to pay in the first place, and the other half just want to make sure that you're the right person to do it for them, because they've got no intention of doing it themselves. So yeah, put it all out.
Absolutely. People want to hear things differently as well. Yeah. So you might feel like, I love what I call the teaching podcast, where I have to sit with notes. I can't walk around when I'm listening to it because I'm trying to take notes about what the person is saying. But that doesn't mean I might end up buying that person's book or taking their course or something like that, because that initial value was so good that I want to have more of it. I want to understand it at a deeper level. So there's no problem in getting your message out there, letting people know what you have available. I do agree with you so much. I don't hold back and think, oh, it's going to be a surprise. Like, no one's looking for surprises, okay? They want information.
Just give it all away. I have two little tidbits as well for if you're trying to get on podcasts, and I think I spoke to you already, Case, about this, that two previous guests that I've had on this show, Travis Chappell, who I was on part of his mastermind, but he's a massive podcaster as well, and he's got a new app called Guestio, which you can look for guests and you can also list yourself, and that's also a full booking platform and stuff like that. But if you go back and listen to my episode with Travis, I think you'll find out a lot about what motivates him and why he started that. And the other episode is with Andrew Allerman, and he's got podcast guests as his website. Again, you can list yourself there. And I've had quite a bit of success for some of my clients on there, trying to get them some gigs on podcasts as well. His completely different to Travis in why he set it up. His was just an email that he was putting out and sort of marrying up podcasts with people, and then he created the website and he started charging for it. So two very different systems, but as part of your research, once you start taking all the tips from Cass and you've got those 100 podcasts, that's sometimes a way to actually reach out to the podcast hosts as well, because their details are maybe there. Plus, if they're open to it or not, because as you were saying earlier, it's sometimes hard to get in front of these people because they're very shut off and there's no contact details, or it doesn't look like they are looking for anyone. Whereas these platforms sometimes give you a bit of an in because they're open.
Yeah, I say absolutely explore it and check out that this is the new step. I think these services, these platforms that are actually providing guests and hosts a place to just go and see what people are talking about. You can post your bio, you can put the information around what topics you would talk about, because that's another thing when you're reaching out to podcasters, when you're looking at their show, make sure you put in one or two ideas about what you'd like to talk about so that they can have a sense of that. Yeah. And, some of these platforms, you could just have it all there and they can find you as well and just sort of pick you themselves and go from there. So I think that's absolutely going to be an area of growth, is these platforms, and which will make it easier. Like I said, the directories are not robust search engines. So you're kind of just plowing through them and you're searching by title. The keywords are for title, and that's not necessarily what the show is about. You'll find out, when you get into research, it's like, okay, that's a different name, but it turns out that there's some very clever names out there, but they're not going to be easy to find. And you might find them through some other roundabout way, checking other people's websites to see what shows that they've been on. If they're in your field, you might just Google search things and you'll find other shows that come up more directly under a specific keyword. But the directories themselves list all the podcasts and all this information, so you want to be able to use them. But I think, over time, it's going to become much more sophisticated. Podcast discovery is a big topic, and it will become much more sophisticated as the years go by and podcasts become even bigger and bigger.
Oh, 100%. I love that. Case, thank you so much for your time and getting up. Well, being up and ready so early for us this morning.
That's fun.
How
Thank
can
you.
everyone find you? Because I've got your details at the bottom of the show notes, but if people are listening and they don't want to go into the show notes, how can they find you quickly?
Yes, absolutely. On social, you can find me at Case Lane or at Ready Entrepreneur on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I think you'll have the link for people to get a checklist of what I was talking about, as well as at caselane.net/checklist. And then we'll be connected that way as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Case. And I can't wait to chat to you again.
Thank you. It was great.